Ever since the hack video, I've wanted to pick myself up a slider because you don't always have a piece of paper with you that you can slide across a countertop or a table. And even if you did, there's no guarantee that the countertop or the table is at that perfect height that you want your camera slide to be at. You also can't move a table or a countertop with you everywhere you go. Well, I guess you could, but you would need a second pair of hands and also a good moving dolly. So I started doing my research and I quickly found out that sliders are not as easy as they seem. What do I mean by easy? You can't just pull them out of the box and go outside and start doing slider shots. One problem that I kept coming up with is sliders generally need 2 tripods in order to get a nice level horizon. I'm sorry, but I'm not gonna set up 2 tripods just to get a quick slider shot. It's just too time consuming. I'm like, there has to be a better solution than setting up 2 tripods in order to get that beautiful slide shot. You could put the slider on the ground and do a slider shot across the ground, but again, you're gonna be stuck only at that certain level when you might wanna be more like at eye level or at waist level. I did find some sliders out there that only require 1 tripod, but they're either very expensive or they're pretty cheap and they have a bunch of bad reviews. One common bad review that I saw when looking at 1 tripod sliders is that when the camera slides across the slider, it starts to kind of tilt down and then the camera kind of turns at a bad angle. That's why a lot of those sliders require 2 tripods so that the camera can stay nice and steady across the whole way and the slider doesn't move. This isn't a slider, but it would be cool if it was. That all changed when I was looking on the internet and I found a new slider made by a company named Proaim that only requires 1 tripod and it only has that arcing issue start to happen when it gets to the outsides. Also note that if you have a wide angle lens on your camera, it exacerbates that arch issue.
Now, I wouldn't say this thing doesn't arc at all. When it gets to the outside, it starts to arc. The way that I figured this out is I turned the balance meter on the ZV-1 and I slid it to the left and I slid it to the right, and it started to get out of balance when it was on the outside. So it's not a perfect linear line, but it's still better than if I had to get 2 tripods out.
Now, full disclaimer, this is not sponsored by Proaim, but they sent this to me for free so that I could make a video about it and see how I liked it. They also gave me a link that I can give to you guys for a discount. So if you're in the market for a slider, you might want to look into this one. So the first thing that I noticed when I started playing with this slider is you can't actually put the camera right on this quarter mount thread. You have to put some type of ball head or tripod head on the screw. That way your camera is a little bit more agile for the angles that you want to get when you're sliding. I'm going to leave all the accessories that I bought for this particular slider in the description so that you guys can have a look at it. I also got an Arca Swiss mount plate that I could attach easily to the top of my tripod. I also attached an Arca Swiss mount plate to the bottom of my ZV-1 so I could easily attach it to the ball head and go get some slides. The reason I wanted a slider is because it gives video another level of professionalism rather than just trying to use a gimbal or your hands to make a slide movement. This actually holds that horizontal line so steady, and you can just tell a difference when you see a slider shot compared to when you see just a slide with your hands or a slide with a gimbal. I'm gonna show you 2 different shots. I'm gonna show you one where I'm actually putting the camera on the slider and then one where I'm going handheld so that you can see the difference on how much the slider actually helps. I'm trying with my hands and it does not look as good. And I'm going as smooth as I can with my arms. I'm locking them into my chest and I haven't drank any coffee. You can really tell the difference when you have something in the foreground that's like a table or a countertop and you're trying to focus in on something that's in the background. And when you slide across, you can see that foreground, that table or that countertop going up and down when you're going handheld or even with a gimbal. But if you're on a slider, that thing just stays straight and level the entire time. And it just looks so good. So to touch on the specs really quick, they make 2 different versions of this slider. They have the smaller version, which is just called the Sway, and it can hold up to 6.6 pounds, so it's perfect for A7 IIIs, ZV-1s, smaller DSLRs. And then they make a bigger one, which is used for cameras up to 22 pounds. So you could put a small dog on it, you could put a big cinema rig on it. Realistically, I'm getting about 15 to 16 inches on the actual slide itself. You can't fully extend the slider because then it becomes stiff. So originally I was hoping for a powered slider, that way I could just set it and forget it. But then I started to look into it and I realized that it's actually gonna cause more of a workflow for me because I have to make sure that it's charged, I have to make sure that it connects to my smartphone. A lot of times the powered sliders have to connect to an app on your smartphone, which means you have to make sure your smartphone is charged. So I just decided to go with a manual one where all I have to do is just throw it in my camera bag, throw it on the tripod, and get that perfect shot with my hands and forget about ever having to remember to charge it. I don't know, when they first sent it to me, the first thing that I thought about is to use it as like a macro slider, be able to get really close to the ground, flip my tripod upside down, and use it as almost like an upside down tripod like they did in Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. Well, maybe he didn't have the same contraption I had, but I'm sure my neighbors were thinking that I was doing something like he was doing. When I actually figured it all out and I got the tripod set and I set the camera up perfectly, I was amazed to see how the camera just seemed like it was floating across the ground, and I was able to get some really cool shots. I think you could make an entire channel with just the setup alone. If you know about macro videography, it's very difficult to keep your camera steady. It's almost impossible because you're already so focused in, so every little movement you can see. But when I threw it on the slider, I'm not gonna say it took away 100% of those jitters, but it definitely took about 80 to 90% out, and then it was just a matter of trying to be as smooth as I could with my hands. The cool thing about this slider is there's no slider track. Normally with sliders, if you want to do kind of a push forward type of shot, you would have to slide over the track, and as you're sliding forward, the camera would be able to see the track. So you'd have to do some post-production work, or you'd have to change the camera angle a little. Whereas this slider just moves straight forward, and there's nothing here, no track or anything. So you can just slide right over it and you don't have to worry about, oh, I can see the track. Another perk to having this be on one tripod is you can easily carry it around and you can set it to whatever height or level that you want it to be at. Another cool shot that I've seen in movies that I wanted to see if I could actually achieve with this slider is putting the tripod kind of on a diagonal angle and then changing the ball head so that the camera is level with the horizon, and then it just slowly slides up kind of at a diagonal angle. I don't know, it's just so cool. This is a great scene establishing shot when you're having a picnic. A good way to figure out if your slider is nice and horizontal with the line and it's not a little off balance and then it kind of flows to the right or to the left is there's a little safety pin in the front, and you push it down and then you try to make it go as vertical as possible with the tripod, and then undo the clip, and if it stays still, then you're good to go. And it kind of just freely flows back and forth. Then you just make sure that your camera is level with the horizon, and you'll get an awesome slider shot. Another cool thing this slider has is a tensioner knob at the bottom, so the tighter you go, the more consistent of a slide you'll have. So all of the tools that we talk about on this channel help you tell a better story. You don't need any of them, you don't need all of them, but when you do have them, it really helps elevate your story to the next level. The more tools you have, the less restricted you are when it comes to creative freedom. Proaim sent these to me about a month ago, and I've used them quite a bit, and I don't have any complaints or cons that I could say. If anything, it's all just user error, and the more that I use them, the more fluid I'll get with using them. So thank you to Proaim for sending me these sliders. If any of you are in the market for a slider, I highly recommend you take a look at this and you do your research, but you might come to the same conclusion that I found. I like that it's manual, there's no power to them, and they can fit right in your backpack, and you can get some pretty nice professional looking slides for pretty cheap. I'm Joe with Film Alliance, and until the next video, peace.